Hello and welcome to ET Brand Equity presents The Big Leap, powered by CleverTap, an exclusive chat show featuring pioneers from India's 12 largest and fastest growing brands. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and during these conversations, we will bring you an inside look into the growth stories and success mantras of businesses that have taken a big leap and understand the nuts and bolts of how they identified gaps in the market and created solutions which transformed consumer behavior. Today, we have a new generation financial institution with us that began operations in 1994 and since then has emerged as one of the most exciting digital-first stories coming out of India's buzzing banking and financial space. That brand is none other than Axis Bank. Expanding its network to over 4,700 domestic branches, nearly 11,000 ATMs and 5,900 plus cash recyclers, Axis Bank has raced to become the third largest private sector bank in India and in the process played a key role in moving the traditional banking industry ahead to a digitally operated one. Their growth journey has a lot of lessons for everyone. Would you like to know what those lessons are? Then log into this wide-ranging conversation with Sameer Shetty, who's the President and Head of Digital Business and Transformation at Axis Bank, and Shubrat Mohanty, Group Executive and Head of Banking Operations and Transformation at Axis Bank. Gentlemen, great to have you on board and looking forward to understanding the big leaps that Axis Bank has taken. But let's have an icebreaker first to understand how digital leaders think. So Sameer, we'll start with you. If you could complete the quote, data is the new oil, then what would you say?
Well, if data is the new oil, we have a lot of drilling to do. We have, oil is at different levels. So you have 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever, and then you have shale. I think we are just scratching the surface of the earth.
All right, we have glasses on the table, so I'm going to use that as a cue for a proverb. Is the glass half full or half empty in your opinion when it comes to customer journey, Shubhat?
Well, the glass should always be half empty. Okay. Because even if it gets half full, you need to get a new glass which is larger because the customer journey or the road to a great customer experience is never. There is no end to it. You need to continue to be on it on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. Or you could get a bigger jug.
Or you can get a bigger jug.
All right, let's dive right into the big leap story of Axis Bank. And Sameer, let me come to you because when we look at how things have progressed, digital has played a significant role when it comes to your various products and services. Some figures here, FDs more than 65% are booked digitally, 50% of personal loans and cards, those are being sold digitally. And I believe 65% of services overall, they are being delivered digitally. So can you take us through the journey of making this happen?
So look, I think one of the early calls we took was that if we have to win in the digital space, we have to look at digital like a standalone business and we have to build capabilities that are proprietary to us. So these two things we did early on. So we were perhaps the first bank to set up digital as a vertical, fully self-contained. We also took the call to say that, look, if we want to succeed here, we have to build our own capabilities in engineering, in design, in product thinking, in data, and so on and so forth. So we now have set up a team which is more than 1,500 people across all of these functions, obviously. We have a very large set of engineers, new age engineers in-house who are building products for us. We have a design team which does all the designs of our app and all our digital journeys. We have a very strong data team run by Shubrat, 300, 400 people who are thinking about how we use data to generate better experiences for customers and so on and so forth. So we started with that and then we identified some 8-10 different business problems and we've taken each of them and we've redesigned them using our open philosophy in a customer-centric manner and launched it in the market. And we are now continuing to scale it and use various tools to improve engagement, retention, and do digital marketing and so on and so forth to derive the benefits out of whatever we've done.
All right. Expanding on some of the points that you mentioned, Axis Bank has become one of the leading players in the mobile banking space. You have 10 million monthly active users and 60% of overall users, they bank digitally primarily. So I want to understand, how the nuts and bolts of setting a best-in-class personalization engine comes into play, because you are, in a sense, creating a unique identity for, I think, 28 million customers of yours. So how do you build retention at scale?
No, absolutely. I think, so one of the first programs we started, we called it Channels 2.0. The intent was to say that our mobile app is at the heart of our digital strategy. Right? That's where people come and kind of bank. And so we need something that is distinctive in the market. And though distinctive had 3-4 pillars for us. One very strong and central pillar was personalization. So typically you will find that if the three of us logged into a mobile app, we will see the same app. But that need not be the case. So what we've done now is our app is now hyper-personalized. So as an example, if say you log into the app and let's say your credit card payment is due, you will see a message saying, credit card payment is due, either pay or keep your account funded. I, on the other hand, let's say I've gotten a large credit, I've gotten a bonus. I'll get a message saying, look, you got a large credit, why don't you invest it into an FD or a mutual fund? And Subrat may see some product recommendation or something. So we have now about 35, 40 odd nudges of this nature, which come on the landing page itself of our mobile app. And our engagement there is very, very high. So this was one pillar. The second pillar was to reimagine the app and make it look and feel new age, as well as reimagine journeys fully. We've delivered that. Our new version of the app went live in June. In the last 2 months, we've had many milestones. So one was we reached the 10 million monthly active users mark. Our app rating went up from 4.6 to 4.8. We are now the world's highest rated mobile banking app.
That's a mean feat.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't expect to get there so soon, but we are proud of where we are, and we obviously need to do a lot to retain it. But that's something that is really exciting that has happened to us. Also, in terms of monthly acquisitions, we are now setting significantly higher benchmarks month on month. Last month, as an example, we acquired 500,000 mobile banking customers.
All right, we've seen the highlights reel. So let's get down to the brass tacks and understand how these successes have sort of come about, Subrat. Because when you look at the diverse customer base of India, in a sense, it's a segment of one. And I believe you have a service data lake which operates within a big data lake where there is a lot of inputs coming in terms of understanding the customer better. So how does it shape that engagement and interaction and helps you understand what works and what doesn't for an always-on customer who's being shaped by sort of an omni-channel environment?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, one very important thing for us is to be able to, understand the customer, the number of transactions, the number of observations that we have about the customer, and in some ways the ability to collect as much of that information, because each of these data points are like a dot, and the more dots you have, the better is your ability to connect them, and sharper is the image or the picture that comes out. Famously, India lives in 3 centuries simultaneously, the 21st, 20th and 19th. And we being a universal bank, we need to be able to support all of our customers, regardless of which way they come in and how they want to transition between these different modes of interacting with us. So what we have done is, at the heart of this, is one is our ability to understand segmentation of customers and not use a very broad brush, but come down to the real micro level segmentation of our customer base. In some sense, we call it the DNA of our customers. And there are different DNA archetypes that we have mapped out for our customers. And each of these DNA archetypes reveal a particular kind of customer behavior, a particular kind of customer propensity. And not just that, we are now able to predict a new customer that comes in, which particular DNA will that particular customer fit into based on just an early set of observations about the customer. So that's one, which is segmentation. Second is the ability to then personalize based on that segmentation, which is what you mentioned as the segment of one. What works for these customers, what are the specific life goals, what are the specific spending patterns, behavioral patterns. We have enough data which allows us to have that information about it, about that particular customer. Then the third is to be able to, design things which then we are able to test with these customers. So the service data lake again gives us all the informations that are not just financial, but about what kind of screens they are going to, what kind of requests they are making, even the smallest of requests. What does that tell us about the customer? These things go into our ability to test for hypotheses with these customers. And then finally, we decide on what kind of message, what kind of communication to send, and at what time do we send this communication. So when you take all of this together, it just improves our ability to get the customer to go down the path of what we think is possibly the best option for that particular customer. And we keep giving them very specific, limited, but very relevant set of information. And that's one of the reasons why the engagement with the app is better. Because this is not an app, or this is not a platform that is giving to you information that is just generic and on a very, very sort of regular basis, which does not make too much of sense to you. You get limited set of information, but you get very relevant information.
And that's essential to prevent fatigue, because if you receive continuous communications, there's going to be a fatigue element set in. And on that note, I want to also understand the fact that, you run multiple campaigns, let's say across loans, credit cards, debit cards, and so on and so forth, lots of offers happening there. So I want to understand how you kind of tune the entire process to get the desired response from customers, because when I looked at some of the statistics, you have higher than industry average click-through rates. So what's the secret of the success? You've laid out the 4 factors. Give us certain use cases which can demonstrate that.
You need to have as many data points and data and parameters for you to be able to know what is working, what is not working for the customer. And there is no silver bullet. You constantly monitor these campaign parameters. You go back to your customer DNA, you go back to the process that you've laid out, and you reiterate, and you iterate and iterate till you increase, marginally in each one of these parameters for the net effect to be significantly higher in terms of click-through rates. So I'll repeat the same thing. Customize as much as possible. Get down to personalization at the level of a single customer. Test your hypothesis, do as many A/B tests really quick. Go back, understand what the timing of the communication should be, and keep checking for relevance. If you do this in a fairly fast loop, you will get better click-through rate.
All right, so at least there's a formula for success.
Some formula, yeah.
Taking forward that formula in terms of the impact that it has, on the life cycle of the customer, because you have, I think, 30 initiatives at play in the organization as part of its digital strategy. So from the impact of the different, stages of the funnel for the customer, if you can take us through what's been the impact of programs like, Leap, Maximus, Sankalp, Siddhi, and Olive, especially when it comes to cross-selling and upselling to customers. And also if you can talk about the impact that partnerships, when it comes to retention with players like CleverTap, how that benefits you.
So firstly, each of these products is now at scale. So they contribute to anywhere between 25 to 70% of the sales that the bank does. So as an example, if we take savings accounts, now about 26 to 30% of our savings account acquisition is happening via the digital route. If we talk of loans, that number is upwards of 60%. Just our balance sheet on loans itself, and now I'm talking only of D2C generated loans, which means there is no human being anywhere involved, is about 8,500 crores. So these are all very large numbers, all built over the last 2 to 3 years, thanks to the efforts that the entire bank has put together and the kind of stuff that Sundar spoke about. So the impact is quite fundamental, and there are 3-4 things that have added to this, which I will talk about. One is this notion of in-house product design. So as an example, we have a design team, and our design team, some of them earlier worked in VFX, in movies and so on and so forth. Yeah? These are guys who have they don't come from any banking background at all. They come from their specific expertise. We are perhaps the only incumbent institution in the country who have a design system. So design system means that every element of what a screen should look like is standardized. This is open source. Anybody can access it. It's called Subzero, subzero.axisbank.com. So anybody can go and access it, and you can build screens and so on and so forth very easily. These are tested with consumers, and hence we know that each element works. And hence the click-through rates are better, along with obviously the personalized campaigns and so on and so forth, because these have been optimized at a very granular level, they work. Then we work with partners like CleverTap, as you mentioned. So see, the personalization that Subrat mentioned about has 2 elements broadly. One is the customer's data. Second is their in-app behavior, right? So if they, let's say, fill a form and they drop off, then what is the action? And when does that action happen? Or if you know that certain set of customers come in the app and behave in a certain way, and we want to nudge them to behave in a certain other way. Now, how do we kind of create that? So these type of programs we've now been able to create. And to Subrat's point, these are micro programs, which means they may run for, let's say, 3,000 customers only, right? Whereas we have 10 million customers who are on the app, but there may be a program which is targeted only at 3,000 customers. We can run them. We can see the impact almost real time. And basis what the impact is coming through, we can then steer the program, right? We can either kill it, or we can scale it up, or we can change some parameters and so on and so forth. And this has helped us improve a lot of our mid-funnel and end funnel conversions on each of our products.
All right. And as, say, the nudges get smarter as part of the Sub-Zero redesign philosophy, how does it impact, say, emerging products and services which are coming about, let's say, buy now, pay later, or digital gold, or your e-commerce platform like Grab Deals? How does that play out in terms of loyalty and retention?
So again, see, each of these platforms is a engagement platform for us, right? It's a way for us to become a financial partner in the customer's life. So as an example, we are working on something we call the Personal Finance Manager. It should come live in the next month or so, wherein basis data that we have about the consumer, we will provide them some insights on their spends. So as an example, we could say that your restaurant spend last month was 20% higher than normal. And so it's a trigger for you to think about taking some action. It could be on investments. So I could, for example, tell you that people like you invest 30% more in mutual funds. And then you may want to, buy a mutual fund. Or it could be on protection, which is insurance. So I could, as an example, look at your data and say that for your age and your demographic, maybe you are underinsured. Or it could be on credit. So I could, as an example, maybe tell you that your credit score could be better by 20 points if you did a few things. So it's a wholesome package, again, driven by data and driven by some of the insights we have about customers as a whole. The intention is to use this as a way to move beyond a transaction instrument to being a financial services partner. And once you decide that, as an example, you want to buy a mutual fund, you can do it in 2 clicks on our app. Or if you want to buy insurance, you can do it in maybe 4 clicks. Or if you want to improve your score and move to a lower cost EMI, maybe you can do a balance transfer with us, and so on and so forth, right? So all of that is, the entire life cycle is available on the app. Our aspiration and intention is that we become a financial services thought partner and help our customers lead a much healthier financial life.
All right. Now that's the external side, of transformation that we talk about. I want to talk about, how the company, how the brand itself looks at this transformation and changes itself internally, because we are in the era of customer zero, in a sense that the companies learn from their customers as well on how to run better. In that context, Axis Bank, its digital strategy is aligned with its GPS strategy to transform the core of its business. So I want to know from you, you have, I believe, 250 plus digital services, which helps your frontline capacity kind of have a lot of things taken care of so they can focus on the customer. Take us through the transformation that is happening within Axis Bank in terms of improving itself.
As part of the GPS strategy, one, almost like a long-term program that we have within the bank, and we are working on it. We say that it's not a project, it's just a continuous journey, is what we call SPURGE, which is our customer obsession program. And a key component of that program is we need to make sure that on 2 parameters, on the loyalty of the customer, which is customer continuing to engage with us deeper and get better, in terms of their number of products, number of services that they're taking from us. And second is customers continue to be promoters of ours. So these are the 2 sort of broad, business parameters. How do we improve loyalty and what are the metrics for that? How do we make sure that customers are our promoters? Based on that, the 250 odd services that you mentioned, we decided that a lot of friction that a customer has and a lot of time that the bank is actually spending is because there are a huge number of service transactions, huge number of transactions that can be moved back in a very frictionless way to the customer, where they have control over their, destiny in a way, in terms of how they want to engage with us. And this has happened fairly quickly and fairly smoothly. We have, you can still come to our branch. you're welcome. You'll have conversations with us, with our branch managers, with our relationship managers there. But anything that you have come to the branch for can be done digitally for you. We will do it for you digitally in the branch itself so that it gets done really, really quickly. And the difference in terms of the speed of execution, how quickly can it be done, is not in terms of, just reducing it by a number of hours or so. It's dramatic. What might have taken you 3 days if you had gone through the conventional route now can be done in almost 3 minutes, because a lot of it is just self-service enabled. Now, what does that mean? It means, one, of course, the customer is getting good, service, but the capacity that it is releasing for the team, it allows them to actually get deeper in terms of the next conversations that they're going to have with customer, the prep work that they need to do. If it is a customized, discussion that they're going to have, they have time, they have information available, because we are spending that released capacity to actually make sure that we are presenting ourselves to the customer in a manner that is useful for the customer. Now, all of this at the back requires multiple things. See, the change management for the customer to adapt to those 250 services is one. The change for our employees to actually say to the customer that, listen, you can do this, I will help you do this. And then for our employees to then find what are the things they can do in that spare time. Because what we then have done is we have an app called Siddhi for our own employees, where we tell them, now that you have some of this spare capacity, how can you do financial planning for your customer better? How can you anticipate, to the extent that on the app, we can prompt our employees that the passport that the customer had given us as part of their KYC requirement, and we have that, will expire in the next 6 months.
So that adds to your nudges.
So when you go and have a conversation with customer, just gently remind, sir, I was looking at your profile, I see that your passport is going to expire in 6 months. The customer might know it for all you know. But just the fact that this is a relationship manager of mine who now even has this kind of a view is just a good,
a meaningful interaction.
It's something that gives them an assurance that he's really thinking or she's really thinking about me. And it's not just one. There are, the classic ones are there. I'll go and, wish you birthday, happy birthday, and so on, or wedding anniversary, and so on and so forth. But there are very specific, meaningful things. Something is expiring, this is getting over, your balance in FASTag account is coming to is reaching zero. Please, upgrade, please increase. The number of nudges that we are sending to our own employees so that they have better conversations is also fairly high. And the change management for our employees to both accept, understand, and then act on this is also a large part of this exercise, because you need to be able to make sure that your employees are also keeping pace with this change.
In a sense, it's co-creating value with your employees, because you're giving them the freedom because they will be frontline with the customer. So they have a sort of a great view of what the customer needs are. And here you provide them with the tools to tune themselves according to their customers' needs. Now, an aspect of this, which I also want to understand, is the partnerships ecosystem, because this also involves taking data from various places. And Axis, I believe, has a robust partnerships ecosystem. Over 80 partners across digital lenders, aggregators, telecoms, payments. So I want to understand from you, Subrat, are these relationships, in a sense, the superpower to Axis Bank's arsenal to get ahead of the competition, especially when you're reaching out to the next 100 million plus customers?
See, the pie is so large, and there are so many players here wanting to go at the same set of issues and problems, that for us the best thing to do is not try to solve this single-handedly, because there are so many other players who are approaching this problem with their own level of specialization, their own ability to look for an answer that is unique for them. So one of the things that we speak about is the open philosophy. Now, this is at a macro level an Axis Bank open philosophy, but it's also the philosophy that we use at the digital banking platform in terms of how we build. And we see ourselves as in a bit of an open bank ecosystem, where we will provide our partners with APIs, we will provide our partners with everything that they need in order to be able to service their end customers based on the banking needs that they have. And our view is that the next 100 million customers can be acquired, can be engaged in a model that is very different from the 4,700 branches that we have used to get the 28-30 million customers that we've got today. And this model of acquisition, this model of engagement can be done by what we call connect and develop. You connect with various partners, you work with them, you develop. In some cases, we take strategic investment or stake in them. In some cases, we allow them to have a sandbox within where they can play with us in terms of what new products or services they can create. In some cases, they are mature enough and we work with them to see what we can do in order to attract the next customer, the next cohort of customers. And therefore, the range of these partnerships, on one end, we've got government entities who are working in villages of India. Then we have partners who are experts in small and medium businesses, enterprises of that kind, and kirana stores. They go and do various kinds of products and services. Then we have partners like large e-commerce providers with whom we have a very different kind of partnership. Then we have partners like cloud service providers who do a very different set of services with us in order to service this market. And then you have fintechs, and you have these new age partners with whom we again have a very different set of relationships. But underlying all of this is our humility in a way, as well as our recognition that we have to be an open ecosystem, not a closed garden or not a walled garden, which will allow others to, in some sense, come connect with us. And that open ecosystem will go out and provide, because the needs of the customers and in some sense the interweaving of multiple products, multiple services is of the kind that it will be stupid on our part not to be working with partners to be able to service that need of the customer.
All right, taking forward what Subrat mentioned, Samir, your Axis Bank is building a sort of a banking of the future framework for corporate. So speaking on connect and develop and this open ecosystem, what's been the response from this customer segment for the APIs that you've sort of opened up from a product and use case perspective, and how does it help you retain them?
So I think it's a fantastic point. In general, most digital initiatives have been focused on retail customers. But there is this big part of corporate banking which also can benefit significantly from digital. And hence, we've launched this very big effort, we call it NEO internally, on making our corporate banking experience digital. We've launched a bunch of stuff here, like the APIs you mentioned. We now have about almost 300 APIs focused on corporates, which are live on our developer portal. We have a developer portal that we believe is best in class. So corporates can come, they can auto-register, they can do the UAT themselves. There is no manual interference anywhere. So it's completely digital that they can build. The adoption of these APIs has been exceptional, actually beyond our expectations, quite honestly. The volume of transactions flowing through our APIs is upwards of 50,000 crores a month. And we are signing up approximately 20 new clients every month for using these APIs. We are also coming live now with APIs on the trade finance side. And now our expectations are much higher given what we've seen on the transaction APIs. And so we believe that we will see some good traction there as well. We are also completely revamping our corporate internet banking and our corporate mobile banking, though that is a little bit maybe in the future. In general, when we speak to corporates, the expectation is their finance teams are becoming more and more digital. So they want to integrate. They don't want to do something on their ERP, then come on to the CIB and do a payment. They want to accept the invoice on the ERP and then make the payment from the ERP itself. And what we built is now an ability for every corporate to do that. We also have standard, translators in between, so that the ability of the corporate's ERP to integrate with us is also taken care of. And that process itself becomes very, very smooth. It's less than a 2-week process as we speak in the market now. So we are seeing great traction here. And our belief is that 3 years from now, corporate banking will look fundamentally different from what it does today.
See, just on that, just a extension to this point, for any small, medium business, even somewhat large business, if you were to look at their evolution of how they would have scaled up or how they would have been set up, the classic model was you start a business, then you look for a software package, you look for a office, automation package, word processor, whatever, spreadsheet. Then you start looking for some kind of an ERP, some kind of an accounting package, some kind of HR package. And you did all of this as a one-to-one integration, implementation and so on and so forth. You became larger, you would go to the next version. That would be another rollout of a large package. And then over the years, what has happened there is it's now a lot of it is SaaS-based plug and play, right? You have you use it only when you require it. You have all these APIs for many of these packages which you can just immediately connect, and within next day you are up and running. The question is, why can't this happen with all the banking services for many of these? Actually, the banking services still follow that path which was done 10 years back for all others. And our thing is that we just need to bring banking at the corporate banking level with many of these players at the same level as how everything else that they are doing today has changed. Right? You connect, within a day you are on in terms of the cash management service, in terms of Forex, whatever it might be. So that's really what it is. And, like Samir said, the adoption rates and the volumes that are coming through already are exceeding the expectation that we had. So companies are actually ready. You sometimes think that they might not be ready. They might still want to send someone to the branch. They might want to still have someone send you a document to sign. That's a lot of our shibboleths that we need to be getting rid of, and which we are doing at a fairly
But it's great to see that there is an honest assessment of how things are and how things need to change. And a part of this conversation always leads to what's next, right? Because you're building Data Stack 3.0 for enhanced analytics and CX. So broadly looking at the next stage of growth, the next stage of retention, what's going to come up, because you have data platforms maybe serving the unbanked or driving financial inclusion, lots of use cases coming up. So what's next? Give us a preview.
I think there are maybe three areas that are of tremendous interest. One, like you said, is where there is the data density is low for the segments. How do we in some sense still be able to serve them? So on one hand, you have customers where we have explosion of data about them because of just the amount of digital footprint that they leave behind. But there is still a large part of the country which is, like you said, unbanked, low on credit, but tremendous potential. Where if we do not find, solutions that allows us to still serve them despite some of the low data density, then we will be, finding it difficult to, scale that particular line of business, which is a focus area for us. Some of it is getting sorted or solved because of some of this national infrastructure that we've put from the government, from various national institutions. But then you still should be able to use these somewhat limited data points to be able to, provide them the same level of service. And that's one part of it, which is essentially saying unorganized data, data that is third party, but not necessarily financial data. Can we bring that together and still be able to
create a profile,
and create products and services? And that's one important area of focus. Second, one of the things that is important is that we need to continue to be able to manage risk and regulations and compliance. And a large part of, now our focus on what we do with data is also in this area. Because traditionally, and maybe a lot of other, fintechs, etc., focus on data to acquire customers or, build, more business, more, GMV, whatever you might call it. For us, we are in the business of really, managing risk at an aggregated level, right? So how to use data to get better on risk, compliance, regulation, so that you are not only working on one vector, which then later will come back to bite you because you have not built your data and muscle on this particular area as well. And there is some fairly good, work that is being done and more in the pipeline, just to be able to anticipate, what we are bringing in the pipe through the digital channel. in terms of regulatory or compliance or risk issues, and therefore how to manage that proactively. And this is something that is going to become more and more critical, because what is happening is both the volume and the velocity of transaction is changing. So let me give you an instance. In the past, you might have been doing a reconciliation end of the day because you had 12 hours of a particular service, NEFT, RTGS, only working till 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. Now it's 24/7. Not just that, now because it's digital, what earlier would have been 300 transactions in a period of an hour, today you can have some days 3 million transactions going through in that hour. And if you have missed one particular step as part of your risk management practice, the quantum of what risk you are now taking is very different from what you were taking earlier. So you need to be able to use data in order to be better prepared for this kind of change in volume and velocity. So that's second. And the third area in data, in the way we are thinking about is, how do we make sure that this is available to partners, to our sales folks, to our relationship folks, so that they are able to use it at the right time. I mean, it's not just about we doing this and pushing it. It's about they being able to, source it and use it whenever they want. So in that sense, just having this on cloud, having this anytime, on demand, and all of these things are continuing to become, more and more relevant.
All right, those are the value drivers at play. As we head to the last leg of this conversation, we've covered so far where Axis Bank was, where it is, and where it is going. Time now for some lessons and words of advice from the both of you. So Samir, we'll start with you. In this very, very interesting digital banking journey so far with Axis Bank for you, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned?
So I would say actually three things. See, first is this notion of digital as a independent business, and being something that is now at the core of the bank versus something at the periphery which is supporting and engaging customers and so on and so forth, is a very critical one. Number two, to win in digital, you need to have distinctive digital capabilities. You can't win in digital with outsourcing everything to everybody. So that's number two. And number three is just the focus from the senior management team and the commitment to say this has to work and we have to make this work is a third, I would say, key learning for me.
All right, Subrat, the biggest lesson learned, especially in the context of retaining customers in that digital first strategy.
Yeah, I think only the paranoid survive. And this has, Grove wrote this in mid-60s. And I guess that's the only thing from mid-60s that might still be relevant, because, you just have to be thinking ahead and not be satisfied. And I'll give you an example. I mean, you believe that you have hit say 35%, acceptance rate because of the ability to use data. And you think, oh, this is way higher than 7% that we had. But the 65% that is still going out, you could have calibrated and reworked a proposition or reworked an offer that the 65% could still have come through you. Earlier, it was not possible. Now you have the information, the ability to test for you to be able to do this. So for us on digital, we have to remain humble. We have to continue to be paranoid. And we have to continue to ask the question, who's doing the best in this area? So either partner with them or copy them fast and, get ahead.
Maybe it's time to get those t-shirts printed with that tagline, only the paranoid survive. All right, we've got a lot of startup founders who are watching this show. So any words of advice that you could offer in kind of taking and managing big leaps? I mean,
so look, I think number one, financial services is a really long-term game. You can't build high-quality organizations and high-quality franchises in 2 years, 3 years. It takes many years for you to build the customer trust. And for you to build a viable franchise, again, it's an annuity business. So you have to think of it like an annuity business and build it over time. And the second point, Subrat mentioned this earlier, is that risk regulation compliance is as critical as customer experience, speed, agility, scale, growth, etc. Subrat keeps saying this, that regulation is a feature, it's not a bug. And so you have to think of it in that fashion.
All right. You'll get some regulators who are very keen to speak with you on that. But speaking of larger enterprises, they have their own set of issues, whether it's legacy or so on and so forth. Your words of advice to, say, larger enterprises on taking big leaps. What would you say, Shubrat?
I think the first one is acknowledgement that you will have to cannibalize some of your business if you want to make sure that you get digital in front and center. This is a trade-off. And a lot of the reasons why large enterprise don't do well is because they get into this channel conflict thing, that if I go into this, then what will my traditional channel think about? And that's very short-term thinking. Because if you don't do it, forget traditional channel or digital, somebody else will eat your lunch, right? So this trade-off is something that people will have to accept, bite the bullet and, go ahead with that. So that's number one. And second is, a absolute firm, and unyielding vision that this is where the future is. And therefore, when you are, at the senior leadership level, it's mostly a capital allocation decision. Beyond that, everybody else is doing whatever they are doing. Where do you put your capital? Disproportionately. And therefore, if you are talking digital, then you should be putting your money where your mouth is. And therefore, the core question to ask is, look at your capital allocation and ask what percentage of your capital allocation is going in digital and digital related activities vis-a-vis the other areas in terms of future investments, right? And that should be the only indicator. So you can talk a lot, you can have some shiny toys, but eventually is the capital allocation decision in sync with everything that you are speaking about?
Show me the money, as
Show
they
me the
say.
money, yeah.
All right. Stay lean, stay smart, stay fit. That's the message coming
And stay
across.
paranoid.
And stay paranoid. On that note, gentlemen, it's time to conclude our conversation. Thank you so much, Samir Shubrat, for speaking with us and sharing with us the blueprint of Axis Bank's growth story and how it manages to continuously delight customers, even in this very rapidly changing environment. Well, it's time to move on to our next segment where we'll get to know more about the investment story behind Axis Bank. Axis Bank has grown massively in the last 3 decades, and today it offers countless products and services across the board. With millions of customers on board, the bank is relentlessly working towards enhancing its offerings and moving up the ladder. So let's hear now from Rajiv Anand, Deputy Managing Director at Axis Bank, on the growth plans of Axis Bank and, of course, the future of the banking industry. Rajiv, pleasure to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the growth plans. But first, let's talk about the brand promise and meeting customer expectations. I want to understand first, how does Axis Bank sort of walk the talk when it comes to its brand promise of Dil Se Open? And what's your approach going to be to make it happen?
You mentioned that Axis is 30 years old, 27 years old at this point in time. It's a journey. We'd like to believe that we will be here 25 years later and maybe 50 years later. And therefore, as you think about the brand, you need to rebrand from time to time in the minds of the customer. So our first brand credo was Badti Ka Naam Zindagi, was all about partnerships. Now it is about Dil Se Open. And I think the customer and customer centricity has become critical as you think about building businesses. In an environment where customers' loyalty is dropping quite sharply, customers are becoming more promiscuous as far as brands are concerned. How do you ensure the customer remains loyal to you? And therefore, Dil Se Open. It is really about taking customer centricity to the next level. And therefore, we've launched something called Sparsh internally. We believe that this exercise that we are going through, which we branded Sparsh internally, will create distinctiveness for us. We do believe that It is a exercise which will take us not 3 months or 6 months, but perhaps even 5 years as we build a distinctive customer experience for customers, not just in terms of when you walk into the branch, but across the channels that we touch them, whether it's on the ATM, whether it's on the call centers, whether it is in the branches, and ultimately, as today, the biggest branch that we have, so to speak, is the mobile app. We have 1 crore customers who are registered on our mobile, and they're coming and engaging on this app 10 to 12 times a month. And so therefore effectively that becomes your biggest branch, so to speak. And so therefore it is important for us to deliver a seamless experience across on a multi-channel basis, because the customer chooses different channels for different experiences, and it's very important for us to be able to deliver a distinctive customer experience across channels.
All right, I'm going to catch on that word distinctive, because at the end of the day, it's a hyper competitive world, and you need to stand out from your competitors. So what's going to be the key for Axis Bank going from number 3 to number 1, and how are investments being lined up accordingly?
We are number 1 in many spheres already, isn't it? If you look at our debt capital markets business, we've been number 1 for the last 15 years. If you look at our equity capital markets business, we've been number 1 for many, many years. And we're known and recognized for that. We have a distinctive position in our cards and payments businesses. We have among the largest ATM networks in the country. We are the first bank in India to create a board level committee for ESG, and I think given the fact that all of us are committed to a better tomorrow, this is very, very critical. But having said that, I think what is most critical to us is that ultimately we're in the business of trust, and therefore whatever we do is around building trust with our customers, and therefore becoming the most trusted brand is the exercise that all of us really come to office for.
All right, let's talk about the philosophy aspect as well, because you've laid out open as a sort of an abbreviated philosophy for digital. Now, this ties in well with your overall brand credo. Can you talk more about what open means and how is it going to transform digital journeys from here on?
First and foremost, what open means is that our mobile app is available to every Indian. It is not necessarily only open to our customers, what we call existing customers. So whether you want to do a UPI transaction, you want a personal loan from us, you want to open an account with us, it is open to every Indian. And each journey that we have built within that has the credo that everything that we do within that should be able to serve not just existing customers, but new to bank customers as well. And what you will find within that is we treat the customer through nudges. We are able to serve the customer in a very, very distinctive manner. And so therefore, what you will find, for example, is that your screen will look very different from my screen. Because of the amount of data that is available to us, we are able to better understand you and to be able to provide you a significantly more intuitive experience as compared to just
a generic experience. A true hyper-personalization.
True hyper-personalization is what we're working towards. And ultimately, everybody has data. But how you're able to convert that data into insights, which becomes intuitive as far as the customer is concerned, is really what the future is all about. And I think entities, organizations that are able to convert data into insights, I think will be the winners into the future.
All right. In addition to that, what lessons does Axis Bank hold for the rest of the banking world in terms of its ability to retain customers? Any lessons in excellence that you would like to share with us?
I think customer centricity is key. Like you rightly said at the beginning, it is a very competitive environment. It is an environment where everybody is coming up with innovation. But I think the key really is to be able to be as customer-centric as one can be across channels. So therefore, the point that I made earlier as well, customers choose different channels at different points in time. When the customer wants a home loan, he will inevitably come to the branch. But if the customer wants to transfer money, he's doing that on a Sunday evening, sitting on his sofa through the mobile app. Yes, all services are now digitized, but the customer chooses
Whichever mode
whichever mode is he or she is most convenient, most conversant with, and is comfortable with. And so therefore, to be able to create a distinctive approach on a multi-channel basis becomes critical. Second is the whole issue of data. I mean, I think, as you think about data, everybody has data, but it is really banks and organizations that are able to convert that into insights, which will be able to, hold the customer. We have a credo internally called Ask Me Never, which is basically, I have all the information about you. Why do you keep asking me, where do I live? What is my date of birth? What is my salary, etc.? So we have a credo internally saying, Ask Me Never.
That's something I would definitely appreciate, because at the end of the day, these redundant experiences become roadblocks. So it's perfect to understand how insights can actually make that experience seamless. So taking that forward, Rajiv, because when we look at the banking of the future, an omni-channel experience, because as you said, the customer chooses the way they bank, whether it's a phygital mode, purely digital mode, or a purely physical mode. So what is the banking of the future looking like for the average customer, according to you?
Anytime, anywhere. I think you've got to embed yourself into the customer's journeys. The customer is looking to buy a house. He's not looking for a home loan. And so therefore, how do you get into that experience well before he actually thinks about a home loan? So can I give you a pre-approved home loan so that when you think about a house, you're not worried about the home loan, whether you're going to get an approval, etc., etc. And so therefore, embed yourself into journeys. That's one. Second is that the customer no longer wants to come to the branch or work on a 9-to-5 basis. The customer wants to be served anytime, anywhere, and therefore that's where digital comes in. And today, like I said, our mobile app is for all practical purposes the largest branch that we have. We have over 250 products and services that are available on the mobile app, which you can complete the transaction on an end-to-end basis digitally, which means that you can be fulfilled digitally. And so therefore, especially for the younger, more digitally savvy customers, an experience of this nature becomes critical.
Absolutely.
And don't treat me like an account number, treat me like a human being. I think is critical.
The authenticity of that experience. And it makes sense for an always on customer. You need to be always on as a bank as well, and being authentic in that experience. Before we let you go, Rajiv, you've helped build many businesses at scale at Axis Bank. So I want to get the words from the wise from you. What advice would you give to a lot of the startup founders who watch this show, especially when it comes to scaling up their business exponentially while still retaining customers?
First, build a great team around you. You can't do everything yourself. I think money is critical. I've had the luxury of, large, big brands working, helping me, build businesses. So, that's to that extent been that much more easy. Be customer centric. Look at solutioning rather than productizing, which means that what is the customer problem that you're solving for? Is I think has to be front and center. So keep the customer there. What is the problem you're solving for? And then build around it, and have the humility to understand that the customer is always right. And so therefore you need to have the ability to be agile, because customer expectations are changing, technology is changing, and therefore you have to have the agility to be able to meet those expectations on a continuous basis. And so therefore, how you do that will really determine whether you may get the initial success, but longevity and the customer loyalty that we started with is critical.
Absolutely. On that note, we'll conclude this interview. Thank you so much, Rajiv, for speaking with us. And of course, I'm sure a lot of our viewers would appreciate the notes that you have given them, especially for scaling up. And who knows, many more stories would emerge. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And with that, we come to the end of this episode of ET Brand Equity Presents The Big Leap, powered by CleverTap. I hope you enjoyed listening to these inspiring growth stories. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back again with 2 more stories of ingenuity powered by technology in retaining customers on the next episode. Till then, this is your host Gautam Srinivasan signing off. Have a great day.